Hey folks, JD here, and I thought today we would go through my top three intermediate or larger size quads. A couple of weeks ago we looked at my top three for beginners, so I thought I'd carry on in pretty much the same vein, and we'd do the top three for the intermediate range as well. So there, I've got three different copters for you today. Obviously, because of their size, I can only put one on this table at any one time. So I'm going to kick off with the JJRC H26D. Now, this copter, I flew this, I think it was in June of this year. And it was my first larger quad that I'd ever flown. And I was actually really quite surprised by it. It felt really quite heavy to lift and to take off. But overall, I think the copter is well worth your time. I'll just go through a couple of features and I'll just tell you why. So here we've got a motorized gimbal and a 2 megapixel camera. So the 2 megapixel camera isn't fantastic. It's better than some of the cheaper cameras, but it's still not great. But the main point of this is just for the motorized gimbal. From the transmitter, you can move this any way that you want to, up and down, left and right. It's got 180-degree turn, and it can look directly underneath itself as well. Very handy for when you are flying. Now, I've taken this out a couple of times. As you can see, I've got a little bit of a battle scar here, where I've lost some of the, well, it's not lost, it's just snapped off some half of the skid. It's very heavy. You do need to have a lot of skill and a bit of practice with you behind you before you do use this. It doesn't have altitude hold, so taking a photograph or a video from this, from the transmitter, is going to take quite a bit of skill. You're going to need a very still day, because once you start lifting this copter, you're going to feel that it feels a bit underpowered. These motors could have been expanded a little bit, and there could have been a little bit more power going through them, because it feels really heavy when it takes off. That being said, it maneuvers left and right very, very, very well. Obviously, once you get used to it, I'm pretty sure you're not going to notice it feeling heavy. It's just my initial thoughts. Once I took off, it didn't take off to the sky and didn't elevate exactly as I thought it would. So obviously, take a bit of care when you're using this. But this is most definitely in my top three intermediate copters to be flying, most definitely. If you haven't checked it out, check out the film on my channel. It's got a little bit of an FPV video in there as well, first person video. A lot of the video, though, unfortunately didn't record, so I could only have a little excerpt up there, but I think it's about a minute long, so you can see exactly what the camera is like. So that's the first one. So the second one is one that I've flown quite recently, and that is this one. This is the UFly W606-3, otherwise as I've called it, the Oreo Cookie, just because it looks a little bit like an Oreo cookie. Now, this particular copter has got an altitude lock facility, whereas with altitude hold, what you'll normally have is the copter will go up to a certain height, and it'll stay at that height, but you can still increase it or decrease it depending on what you're after. With this one, you can't. Once you lock it, it stays in place, and then you can fly it left and right, go around in circles, however you want to, but you cannot increase or decrease its altitude until you unlock the altitude hold button. Now, this one takes a lot of power. This one takes a bit more skill in order to fly, a little bit like the JJRC that we just saw, because it's quite a light copter, but when you're flying it, once again, I don't think the motors are really powerful enough. I think they could always be a bit more powerful, and therefore it does feel a little bit laboured in its flight. Flying it left and right, it does wallow quite a bit from side to side, so you do need a little bit more skill in using this. Likewise, with the landing, what I found is that after 4 or 5 landings attempted, I think 2 were actually successful, because normally on your throttle finger, if you bring your throttle down a little bit, you'll start to decrease in altitude, you'll come down a little bit, and then with a little bit of a tweak in your throttle, up and down gently, you can perform a nice landing. With this copter, if you go too low, the engine's cut out and it just falls from the sky like a brick. So I came across that a couple of times. As you can see, it's actually blown the plastic a little bit in places. See there? So you do need a little bit more skill once again in flying this. When you think about buying an intermediate quad, if you've been flying for a couple of months, you've gone through your basic quads, don't discount this when you're looking for an intermediate quad. Just make sure the one that you get has got the camera built in. So yeah, I mean, definitely keep this one. Keep your options open with this one as well. Now, the third one isn't actually a quadcopter. It's a hexacopter. And this is the MJX X600. Now, I really like this. I really like MJX products. They're built quite cheaply, quite reasonably. They are sold quite cheaply, quite reasonably. And what you get for your money is pretty standard, to be honest. This particular one was the first full-size hexacopter that I had flown. And I got to be honest, I was very impressed. This is the no camera version. Obviously, when I did take it out, I strapped my run cam to it so we could get some nice shots. But there is a camera mode out there, a camera model, sorry, out there you can buy. If you have bought the model without the camera, don't despair. You can buy a camera for this anyway and just plug it directly in to this little port here. So it had this little dial here. So this dial would take you from 0 right up to 100. And this little dial here would have to be on a lower setting in order for you to take off, and then you could slowly crank it up and it would allow more power to go through the motors as you were flying. When I first started flying this, I didn't realize about this, and I had it on 100%, and she just kept on nosediving all the time. I put it on to 0, slowly increased, and then before I knew it, I was flying without any problems. I put this in the intermediate category purely based on that transmitter dial alone, because it can be very tricky when you're starting out. You want something which is really basic. You want something that can take you from the ground to the sky and you can control. That dial made me think quite hard about my flying technique, and made me also think about how I was going to take off and land as well. So this is why this particular hexacopter is in the top 3 copters for the intermediate level. Now, some of you might think, oh, hang on, I don't agree with that. I think this is good for beginners. That's great. That's fantastic. Personally, I think this should be in the intermediate class, purely based on that dial alone. So, if once again, all 3 of these copters are on the channel. If you haven't checked out the unboxings or the flying videos, I recommend you do so. You might find something in there that you haven't seen before. Or you might think to yourself, yeah, actually, do you know what? I quite like this. There are all buy links in the description as well. So should you think, oh, actually, where can I get this from? Just have a look in the description. There's going to be a link down there as well, just to let you know exactly where to get it from. So normally I order from 2 places, BangGood and Amazon. So those links, if it's available on both sites, those links will be in the description. So I'm not going to be able to fit all 3 copters on here. So what I'll do is I'll move these to one side and I'll put the 2 smaller ones on there. Unfortunately, the JJRC isn't going to fit, just based on its size. So there we have it, folks. This has just been a short video, just going through what I think, out of the copters that I have flown, are my top 3 intermediates. So we've got the MJX X600, the UFly W606-3, and also not forgetting the JJRC H26D. So there we are, folks. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope this has given you a little bit to think about if you're thinking about upgrading from a beginner to an intermediate quadcopter. So let us know in the comments if it has helped you. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to tune in on Wednesday at 6 PM GMT. That's when the newest unboxing video is going out. I don't think you're going to want to miss that one. That one is quite special. Alright then, friends. So thanks very much for watching. Until next time, happy flying.